I finally figured it out.
The School of Podcasting with Dave Jackson.
Hey, I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting, and it's been really just bugging me that YouTube calls itself a podcast because it's not. But I finally figured out why this really bugs me. But if you haven't heard my argument before, what really happened is TikTok started taking a sizable chunk of the advertising revenue. I don't know. They had a meeting at YouTube and they're like, all right, guys, we got to get people talking about YouTube again. Larry, what do you got? And Larry's like, I don't know. I have podcasting's hot. And so they're like, brilliant. And they went to all the YouTubers and said, yeah, you're a podcast. And look, I don't understand why people are going, what is a podcast? A podcast is audio or video delivered via RSS, period, end of sentence, stop. And they're like, well, is it sequential? No, it's audio or video delivered via RSS feed. You know, radio is radio because it's delivered via a frequency, and you tune that into a radio, and there it is. Now, if I listen to the TV in another room, just because I'm listening to it doesn't make it radio because it's not delivered, right? Different delivery method, different name. I mean, even books, if you think about it, right? One of my favorite books, Storyworthy by Mathew. Here, it's a book because it's in paper. Same content, different delivery method. We call it a Kindle book. In fact, I often just call it, I read it on my Kindle. Different delivery method, different book. But one of the reasons it kills me is because people will come up to me and they're like, I'm thinking of starting a podcast. I've been thinking about it for years. And I'm like, what's the idea? And they will tell me the idea. And I go, that is a great idea for a podcast. Why aren't you doing it? And they'll go, I don't really want to do video. And I will go, you don't have to do video. And they go, no, everybody says I have to do video. And I go, that everybody is YouTube, because they can put ads against your video. And for, depending on the amount of time, you get nothing.
You get nothing
for that. It's free. And I'm like, you don't have to do video. And they're like, oh, and then they start their podcast. And I hate the fact when I hear video podcasts are booming on YouTube. Well, a video podcast is YouTube. So really what you're saying is YouTube is exploding on YouTube. Well, yeah, that's the only place you can watch YouTube is on YouTube. Or my favorite, well, we have to call YouTubers a podcast because the audience thinks that's what it is. And they said things, literally, I'm not making this up. Oh, what makes a podcast is when people talk in front of a microphone. No, it's an RSS feed. But literally, they went into YouTube and said, if you just check a box, and I was like, oh, does that box give you an RSS feed? No, it sends it to YouTube Music. And I'm here to tell you, leave a comment. I don't know anybody that uses YouTube Music to listen to podcasts. And so I finally figured out, why does this bug me so much? Well, if you think about it, check this out. I busted this out. This is actual, look, it's even got the old vinyl thing around it. This is Jimi Hendrix's Electric Ladyland. This is an album. This is vinyl. Okay. Now here, I've got the CD. I've got the artwork here. We'll just hold up the booklet. This is a CD, right? Or if we want to get technical, this is a CD. But nonetheless, this is a CD, this is vinyl. Now, they're both the same exact content. So I thought back to this, and I was like, hey, maybe we should call a podcast a show, because that's what a YouTube person does. They do a show. It's on a channel, and sometimes that show is distributed via a podcast, via RSS feed. Because back in the, 70s, 80s, when people were buying these things, they'd be like, hey, a new Fleetwood Mac album came out, and, 50% of it was on vinyl, 30% was on CD, 20% was on cassette, and 5% was on, written in the sky by a plane, whatever the other format was. And this is why it bugs me. A podcast has an RSS feed. A YouTuber does not. And that, to me, when YouTube says, no, that YouTube video is a podcast, it's like saying to me, this CD is a vinyl. And I'm like, no, it's two separate things. You're never going to convince me that this is that. And it also, as someone who makes a living explaining things to people, you're muddying up the water. You're taking water and dirt and you're mixing it together, and then everybody goes, hey, we got a problem. Like, look at all this mud. And I'm like, yeah, you took water and dirt. And they're like, how are we going to clean this up? I don't know. Maybe not let the audience pick what we call it, because I think I'm a male model. Trust me, I'm not. That's the dumbest excuse ever. And these are big, giant companies with big bullhorns that if they just keep repeating it, that, hey, this is a CD, this is a CD, no, it's not. But if they say it long enough, somebody's going to go, oh, yeah, it's the same thing. They're both round after all. You know, it's crazy how this is happening. And that confusion is leading to advertisers going, well, wait, how are we going to do this budget? Is it X amount of downloads or is it X amount of views? And that's the other thing I love. The CEO of YouTube changed the definition of a view on a short to this. Like if I just were to, like if I was pressing a button to play, yeah, that would now be a view. Like this much is now a view. And then they literally came out and said, we got 2 billion views. Yeah, because a view is, are you kidding me? I don't care how hard and how many times you say it to me, YouTube and Spotify, this is not this. And you're never going to convince me of that. So I love the fact, and this is where I get upset, I hear people in the advertising space, and look, I want advertising to exist. I don't want it to be 30% of the content, because that's radio, and that is not the benchmark we're shooting for. But that's what radio is, 30% advertising. And that's why podcasting took off, because it wasn't 30% advertising. And I love the fact that people without experience in the early days of the internet, when there were only so many websites, you could make a nice chunk of change with banner ads on your website, because there weren't that many places to advertise. And so, hey, if you want to be on a website, you better pony up the cash. Now, fast forward, everybody got a website, and consequently, the advertising companies would go, we're going to pay you this small pittance to put a banner ad on your site. And people are like, no, you paid me this much last month. Why are you going to pay me this much? And they're like, that's fine, because this guy's got a website and she's got a website and they got a website. And so it was a race to the bottom. And from what I understand right now, advertising and podcasting is a race to the bottom. Why? Because it used to be there were only so many podcasts, and now everybody and their brother has a podcast. So it used to be I'd pay you maybe $30, $40 per 1,000 downloads. And for the record, that model doesn't even work. It comes from radio, but it works for some really, really, really big shows. And now those really, really big shows are like, hey, we used to pay you this much. We're going to pay you this much now. And they're like, hey, like, why? Like, we're performing great. Edison Research and Sounds Profitable prove over and over and over again that podcast advertising works. And yet we're getting paid less and less and less. Why? Because of the banner ad theory. More podcasts, and I'm not going to pay you this much, but the guy next door who now has a podcast will take that pittance. So we're ruining podcasting by jamming more ads into it. And some of you have to do that because you got mouths to feed. And so when you used to get paid this much for an ad, and now you're only getting paid this much, now you got to add these many more advertisements to get what you used to pay before. And I hate that. But I just, when I hear people say, if we don't figure out advertising and podcasting will go away. And I'm sorry, but no, podcasting will not go away. Check out Graphtreon, Graphtreon.com. This is people that have put their stats of Patreon, so it's crowdfunding, and they've put their numbers public, and they are making 6 figures a month. So when I hear if we don't get this figured out with advertising, podcasting is going to go away. No, I'm sorry, Mr. or Mrs. Advertiser person, you're going to go away. So I understand your urgency, and I don't want them to go away. But as podcasters, we have the power because we have the audience and we have the relationship with that audience. And so when they go, hey, we used to pay you this much, we're only going to pay you this much, we need to go, no, I don't think so. You need to pay me this much. And we all need to do it together. We need to educate the advertising buyers that, hey, this is how podcasting works. We outperform every other form of media, and we're not going to take less because otherwise we're just going to turn podcasting into radio. I'm sorry, YouTube, you're never going to convince me that this vinyl is a CD, and you're not going to convince me that your YouTube video is a podcast. It ain't happening.